According to recent estimates, 6.7 million people have Alzheimer's in the United States. Those same estimates show 14 million people were playing pickleball. Shaun McDuffee started his journey to help research and find a cure for Alzheimer's over a decade ago. His love of pickleball is now helping to drive his passion, reaching people all over the Pickleverse. Together, we can stop Alzheimer's now. Right now, Shaun joins me on the court. It's the Pickle with Mickle interview series. 0, 0, start. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Shaun McDuffee of Stop Alzheimer's Now Foundation. Shaun, it is an absolute pleasure for me to have you on the show.
You know, well, it's wonderful to be here. I'm happy I've had a chance to join you today. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I think you're sweltering in the heat just about to the same degree as we are here in Austin, Texas.
I think where you are and where I am, we can definitely agree it's going to be warm today. I know we are going to hit the triple digits. And I know down there in Austin, though, you get a little, maybe just a little more of the humidity meter there than we do here. But it's a beautiful city, just like it is out here in the desert. And I really do. I appreciate you making the time for me. And Shaun, the time that you've taken, it's been over a decade now that you've dedicated yourself helping raise money that is, let me say this correctly, the money is going to help fund and find and research the cure for Alzheimer's. And if I could say this again, I appreciate everything you're doing. I think most people have heard of the disease. A lot of people might even know somebody that's been afflicted by it, or someone who in their family, somebody suffered from the disease of Alzheimer's. I don't know, though, if the general populace, self included, really understands it, really understands Alzheimer's and dementia, which makes, again, your foundation, what you decided to do, along with your beautiful wife, Kristen. So, I mean, it's just great. And so really today, that's where I wanted to start. I know it's a very personal journey for you, going way back to 2013. So I thought what we would do is kind of take a three-pronged approach today, like we're on the court, right? We got to move up incrementally to the kitchen. We're going to start with some baseliners back here from when the foundation started, work ourselves all the way up today, because pickleball became a big part of this too, a big part of your life. And that's what's led us to be here together today. So again, I really appreciate you making some time for me. And now I'm going to let you go ahead and tell your story a little bit. Take us back to how this all began, Shaun.
Yeah, you know, I love the pickleball analogy, so appropriate, right? And you know, it a couple things I guess I would start with, because I get these questions a lot. You know, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, right? You mentioned both, and the way that your listeners can kind of separate the two. Everyone with Alzheimer's that's diagnosed and as the disease progresses will develop dementia. Not everybody with dementia has Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is a particular type of dementia. And unfortunately, there's a saying, if you know one Alzheimer's patient, you know one Alzheimer's patient, meaning they are all different. It manifests itself differently. It impacts people differently. The changes are different for everyone. You mentioned going back, you know, my story. My father probably had Alzheimer's, I would bet 8 to 10 years before he was formally diagnosed. It started as, you know, my dad and I used to talk sports. That was our thing. And growing up, and as I went to college, we always connected around sports. I was born in Chicago. I moved up to Wisconsin. So it was interesting because, and I'll get to this later, but I grew up being a Vikings fan, hated the Packers. And I was always a Bears fan because of my dad, but my dad and I really always connected on sports. And I started noticing that many of his stories started repeating. Like we'd talk about Sammy Sosa during the home run era with, back in the, I guess in the 90s.
McGuire.
Yeah, McGuire. And he would tell me the same story over and over. And I'd be like, Dad, you told me that. And I started noticing this, and his condition progressed very slowly. My mom, on the other hand, also developed Alzheimer's. And this was in 2013. Hers was brought on very rapidly after a triple valve bypass surgery. So she was later in life. She had a bypass surgery. She came down here to Austin, stayed with me. And all of a sudden, one day, it triggered. She came in, I'll never forget. She walked into my house in 2013. She was staying at our guest house. And she came in and she said, Shaun, she always carried this little travel alarm clock, the one with the two little bells on it. And she always traveled
an old school.
Yeah.
Hammer back and forth alarm clock.
Yep. And it had a normal clock.
That's how I got up for school every day.
Exactly. And it had a normal clock face on it. And she came in and she said, what time does this say to you? And it was like a really odd question. And I looked at the clock. I go, well, what time does it say to you? She goes, well, I don't know. I can't really tell. And I'm like, well, whatever time it was, it's 7:05. She's like, oh, okay. And that's when I knew something was off. And so I started doing some reading, and I couldn't find a whole lot on Alzheimer's. And I was just looking this up.
And this was in 2013.
Correct. And this was in 2013. Well, I came across a test, which some of your listeners might find helpful if they ever wonder if maybe a parent is kind of moving in that direction. It's a clock test. They literally have you sit down and they ask you draw the face of an old clock, put the numbers 12, all the way 12, 1, 2, 3, all the way around, and then just put some hands on it. It can be any time they want. And I read this. I'm like, sure, I'm going to try this. I sat my mom down. I said, Mom, draw a clock. Don't look at one. Don't look at your watch. Just draw a clock. It was bizarre. It was like a square and numbers all over the page. One of the first things that goes in Alzheimer's is this spatial awareness. Then I started noticing she was always meticulous, meticulously dressed. We were in these families where you sat down and you had formal china for dinner with full forks, full setup. She would set our table for my kids.
It's a meal, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, she would set the table for my kids, and the silverware was all over, right? I mean, and so it was a spatial thing that I started to realize, okay, she's got a problem. Took her in, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it was very rapidly progressing. Long-winded story on that, but 2013, I was really frustrated because I'm like, okay, I got my dad with Alzheimer's, mom's got it, and it was very evident I was going to be putting her into care very quickly. And
with your dad now at this time.
Yep.
As your mom, we recognize now the disease with your mom, and by all means, I appreciate how we got to where we are now. And folks, if you listen to what Shaun said, if you know someone, if you have a loved one, the clock test, and you can Google it for yourself if you want to, but take the man's word for it. He's done this for a long time. There's a simple thing you might be able to do, and I really appreciate those type of tidbits for again the general people out there who are so aware of this disease, yet we're so uneducated, I think is proper about it. And so your mom's developing, like you mentioned, rapidly. Your dad was already determined to have Alzheimer's, yet this was even 5 years before your mom. Was there, and again, as a layperson learning myself a lot about this, any correlation from mom's, surgery to triggering anything up in the brain or no?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the cardiologist who performed the surgery is a client and a friend of mine. And we talked about this. And what I learned is it is not uncommon with this type of a surgery that you will have, it will hasten the progress of Alzheimer's, because what happens, when you have a bypass surgery, they put you essentially on an artificial heart while they're doing this, right? So it is pumping significantly harder than her heart was pumping, and caused a series of mini strokes, right? Because, her arteries were clogged and her heart wasn't.
All the blood. Yeah.
So all that blood and that plaque essentially released up into the brain, and all it didn't, if she were not predisposed or already probably moving towards Alzheimer's, it wouldn't have rapidly brought it on. But it is exactly what, and he said, it can happen in these surgeries. I have seen this before. So that's a great question.
Almost a catalyst. And like you said, it just kind of,
it's like dumping gas on a fire.
Triggered the onset of it, because she certainly might have had some predisposition, up in there. And wow. And that's incredible, because something that I wouldn't have known. And that's why we're getting some awesome information here today. And folks, I'm going to put the website up here soon, but I love repetition. Repetition is good for pickleball. You can go and you can donate a little bit. And we're going to talk about how you can even help Shaun and what the great folks at Stop Alzheimer's Now are doing. But that takes us kind of, through and let's get into the foundation. You're doing awesome things with this. And I know it can't be easy, because, you're finding people, you're asking them to donate some money to help, but then also you're finding places that will take these donations, take the funds that you're collecting, and are really going to put them to use in helping to drive for the cure for this disease. I saw recently, and I was on your website, you work with some cool schools. You recently made a great donation to the folks there at the University of Kansas. Was that $100,000 that I saw went to the University of Kansas, which is awesome. And I'll give you one more tidbit here and let you talk about it a little bit. You also, was this back at the beginning when you did the Walk Across USA, Walk Across America, which was pretty cool. Let's talk about some of that.
Sure. So 2013, I gave you the backdrop on kind of what happened to me that caused me to start to get involved. When my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I started doing research. I'm a financial advisor by trade. So I started looking at all the different Alzheimer's foundations, because I'm like, hey, I want to do something. I want to contribute and give back. And I started looking at all these foundations. And of course, the first thing I do is I dive into financials. They're all public entities. And
you're a money guy.
Yeah. And while I believe these national organizations do some wonderful things, what concerned me is I wanted money to go very specifically to research. And what I found with most of these national foundations, if not all, there was such a high leakage, meaning so much of the money contributed didn't actually go to research. In many cases, I was seeing as little as 30 to 40% of what came in actually went to focus on finding a cure. So I said, I just didn't want to contribute money with that kind of leakage. So I basically reached out to my attorney, said, hey, how difficult is it to start my own foundation? And he's like, well, it's a pain in the butt. You got to go through. There's a 9-month approval process. But he says, it's not impossible. So that's what I did. I started Stop Alzheimer's Now with the sole focus of it really being a direct conduit for me to give directly to research institutions to find a cure. And in particular, I was very focused on not necessarily big pharma cures, but instead focusing on research that was looking at lifestyle, that was looking at diet, that was looking at environmental things. And that was just my own personal bias. Was I kind of felt Big Pharma had an inherent conflict of interest, right? I mean, if XYZ company can come up with something to treat the disease and it's a lifelong treatment plan, that is a whole lot more profitable than something that can cure the disease and make it go away. So I started this foundation as a personal conduit for myself and my company to give money. And then the walks that you mentioned, that was really more, my wife likes to describe it as that was sort of therapy for me. In other words, I sat down, I was frustrated. I didn't feel like I had any way to control what was going on with this disease in both my parents. No one really was talking about Alzheimer's at that time. People say, oh, my grandpa, he's a little senile, you know, and it's just part of aging. Well, that isn't part of aging.
Just getting old, right? Getting old. Grandpa walked up to the park again. We had to go get him.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? Is people look at this like, oh, it's a natural part of aging. Well, it's not. It's your brain is aging significantly quicker than the rest of you. And so I got this idea, and I don't know why or how, but I sat down with some coworkers and I said, you know what? I said, I want to start a walk across the country to raise awareness and get people to talk about Alzheimer's instead of sort of hiding the fact that they have a relative with it. So we laid out a plan. We started at the tip of Cape Cod back in 2013. And we basically decided we were going to walk about 100 to 120 miles a week. So we did our first walk of 100 miles. And that was a game changer for me because myself and a group of 5 or 6 people were walking down the highway, you know, just trudging along through little towns. And the number of people that pulled over because they saw us with T-shirts that said, "Stop Alzheimer's Now." And the number of people that pulled over to ask us and thank us for doing what we're doing was mind-blowing to me. We had people pull over, give us $20 and say, here, you know, what you're doing is amazing. We had people that were literally, we would walk through a town and people would walk with us. It was almost Forrest Gumpish. And every single person.
That's exactly where I was about to go.
It felt like I didn't make a smiley shirt, but otherwise it could have been Forrest Gump. And the people that came up to us, every single person, everyone without question was like, oh, my uncle, blah, blah, blah had it. My grandfather had it. My best friend's dad had it. And everybody shared a story. And after that week-long walk, we really looked at it and said, man, we're on to something here. People really are connecting with the disease and they don't have anyone to talk to about it. So we built a website, and the original website's goal was just simply to be a resource for people to go and learn about Alzheimer's. And so we would post articles and we would post studies and things going on. And we just started doing these walks. Once a quarter, we would take and walk 100 miles. Our goal was to walk from one side of the United States to the other. We quickly realized, okay, there's a big chunk of America we're going to walk through that we're not going to see anybody. So that doesn't really spread awareness. So what we started then is we changed our mission a little bit. And around 2016, 2017, we said we're going to walk in every state. So we walked in about 18 states over a decade, walked about 1,500 miles approximately. And we did that for, like I said, for about a decade. Now, COVID, we had about a year and a half where we weren't walking because even though we would have been outside, we couldn't fly and didn't feel comfortable doing a lot of travel. So it really was in 2021 that I stumbled onto pickleball. And by stumbled on, I mean literally we have a home in Steamboat, and right behind our home in Steamboat was this beautiful tennis facility, huge for a town of this size. And they had 8 pickleball courts. And I'd ride my bike, my family and I'd be riding
Okay.
downtown, and we'd see this big sign, the Steamboat
This is
Pickleball
just to
Association.
get people geographically associated with us. This is Colorado.
Yes, Steamboat, Colorado, correct. And
Steaming.
so
Right.
we were up in
And so they've
Steamboat.
got 8 pickleball courts up there.
Yep, 8 pickleball courts. This was back, and I'll expand on this. This was back in 2021, and all they were was taped off tennis courts.
Okay.
And we drive by
Right.
there and we saw this sign, and there were people stacked up waiting to play, and they had 8 tennis courts wide open. No tennis players, and it was all pickleball. And I'm like, what is pickleball? And so we drove by this and we rode by it for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, I got to figure out what this is. This is bizarre. And I stopped in and watched some people playing, and it was everything from 8-year-olds to 80, maybe 90-year-olds playing. And they were having a blast. And it was 8-year-olds playing with 80-year-olds. And it looked kind of bizarre to me. And I didn't come from a racket background, so I didn't play tennis. I played a little bit of racquetball, but I had no paddle background or racket background of any type, really. And I just started watching how much fun these people were having, and for whatever reason, something clicked. Beginning of 22, I went, this could be a cause that we could partner with. I looked at the community. I looked at how tight people were in that pickleball committee, how passionate they were about it. I looked at the age demographics and said, these are people that I think we could really resonate with. This cause could resonate. So really, it was about 1.5 years ago that we just said, all right, let's try and partner with this community to make a difference. So really long-winded story again. But that takes you kind of through about an 11-year journey. And I'll pause there.
Yeah.
For you.
No, I appreciate it. No, and I wanted you to be able to get long-winded and share the story, because it's important. Because as people, myself and their parents, might start to get a little older, or loved ones or friends start to get older. You mentioned it. This is not a normal part of aging, and there are ways to help to prolong. There are ways to help to understand, and there are also ways for people who have this disease to do things and be maybe a little more comfortable when they're out there with people who can be with them if necessary. And this sport of pickleball, like we're seeing it do for people in general, is doing a lot of good. And it's like you said, you stumbled right into it and thought, wait a minute, light bulb. How could this funny game that I'm just learning maybe help my organization? And of course, I poached right from your website to learn that, hey, guess what you do in pickleball? You repeat some things. There's there's cognitivity and acuity happening in your brain from doing some dinks and being out there on the court. And plus, you get that community with people on the court. And we'll talk about the overall community of pickleball itself. I got my shirt on for you. We're going to get there soon, because personally, pickleball has become a big part of your life too. But let's talk about still the foundation a little bit. I love the walk across America. Folks, they went from Gilbert to Avondale for a part of that walk, which is pretty cool. You guys were in some cool places all across the country geographically. I encourage you to go to the website and look where this walk took place. And of course, you can also donate. I'm going to keep hitting on that one. And what I also love, Shaun, is the pickleball in the middle of stop. Now that is really good. I got that in my Mickle Pod logo as well. One other thing is I saw on the website, and I'm not sure you would know, of course, have you research grants you were given out or awarding this year? Is that to happen? Has that happened yet?
Yeah. So it's just happened. We actually, as a result of what the pickleball community raised last year, we brought in about $265,000 last year just from the pickleball community. And we were able to provide 2 $100,000 research grants, one to Kansas University, which They are doing some amazing research. And the other is to OHSU, or Oregon, University of Oregon, to their Alzheimer's Center. And they're working on a slightly different take. And so long-winded answer again, but basically we provided 2 grants as a result of the effort of the pickleball community and some of our pro ambassadors like Zane and Althoff.
Yes. Yeah, let's talk about working with the pros and some of these pros that you're working on, because similar to you, you've come to find out that some of them, the story is real, and you're working with, let's start with Zane, a great ambassador for the foundation and overall great ambassador for pickleball. If you have an opportunity to go to a tournament and you have an opportunity to get around Zane, guy's just energy and a good guy. So, I mean, go ahead with some of these pros that you are working with.
So once we made the connection of, okay, the pickleball community, could be a great community to focus on. I started getting into pickleball and playing it, and like everybody that's got into pickleball, I immediately got addicted. I loved it and dove into it. And a friend of mine said that he owned a B&B outside of Austin, Sage Hill. And he said to me, he goes, we're bringing in a pro for a clinic. You ought to come out to it. And it's this Zane Navratil. You can pronounce his name. And he goes, some Zane guy's coming out. And, I didn't know Zane from a hole in the wall, but I looked him up and I'm like, ooh, top ranked, pro pickleball players. I'm like, sure, I'm going to go to the clinic. Well, this clinic was on a Monday, Tuesday.
Guys, pedigree, I'm going.
Yeah, exactly. I'm there. And the Friday before we were playing pickleball, and I ended up completely tearing my plantar fascia. So literally I'm in a boot. That's really all they could do for it. And so I'm like, well, I'm not missing this clinic. So I'm going to the clinic. So I show up to this clinic in a boot. And as Zane likes to, when he tells the story, he's like, yeah, he goes, this big doof showed up in a boot to my clinic. And I'm like, what is he doing? But I happened to be wearing, I don't know if it was this quarter zip or something that had Stop Alzheimer's Now on it. And he looked at me and he's like, tell me about that. What is that? It was before the clinic started. And so I told him, and I said, hey, 100% of what we bring in goes directly to research. I said, there's zero leakage. The only expenses I have ever run through the foundation are tax returns. And he colorfully commented, baloney. You can
fell over
whatever you want to put in there.
Yeah.
But he called me out. He says, there's no way. He goes, I've been looking to partner with a foundation. And he's an auditor of a recovery. He would say a recovering auditor from Deloitte. He goes, I've looked at all the books. That's baloney. And I said, no. And he goes, would you be willing to send your tax returns to me? I said, well, let me check and make sure it's legal. And I said, but
yeah,
and so I said, sure. And
that's a bold move, right? Hey, send me.
He's like,
send me your books,
send me your tax returns. I'm like, all right. So I sent him 3 years of Stop Alzheimer's Now returns. 2 days later, I get a text from him going, holy blank, you weren't kidding. He's like, you literally ran no expenses through. He goes, 99.9% of what you bring in goes directly to research. I said, yeah, that's what I told you. And he goes, I'm in. He goes, this is exactly what I've been looking for. He goes, I have a very large platform, a very large following. And he had lost his grandmother, who he was very, very close to Alzheimer's. And so he's very passionate. He just went with it. And he started doing work through his social media platform, his YouTube channels. He started having deals at the end of his clinics. He would challenge the people in the clinic that if they could return one of his chainsaw, or they called Zane saw serves, one of those spinning serves, if they could return it in play.
The illegal one.
Yes, which got banned because of him. And he basically started challenging, saying, you tell me how much you want to bet. And somebody says, I'll bet $100. He goes, all right, if you return my serve, he goes, I'll pay the $100 to Stop Alzheimer's Now. If not, you do. And people started diving in to try to see if they could return his serve. And I will skip to the end of the book and say, you can't. It's about 1 out of 20 people can actually get it back into play. It's crazy. I get why they banned it. But I started really, Zane is why this thing kind of started to really rocket. And I built a pickleball court here in Austin because as I started getting obsessed with the game, there are no courts. I mean, Austin to this day is horrible for the number of people who play. I mean, it's one of the top 2 or 3 cities in America for people playing, and there's no open courts. So I just said, screw it.
Talk about that because there's certainly a large pickle presence in Austin. I know this for sure. There's some great players that are around there. Now, I played when I was in Austin for work at, I'm going to get it wrong, Bolden Acres. Is that right? Sure. That's a pickle place in
2 courts
in Austin. And so, right. And it's kind of like almost a kind of a chicken and pickle vibe, you could kind of say, because they do some food and there's some other stuff. But that's what I was going to say. There's 2 courts out there. And we were there for a team building event because most of my company that I worked with had never played pickleball.
Yep.
And just the 2 courts. And is there an indoor center somewhere in Austin now?
There's now 3. There was none when I built my court. There is Tim Klitsch with the Ranchers MLP team. He built he renovated an indoor facility, Pickle Ranch, and that just opened, I think, last month. There is the East Side Pickleball Club, which I believe is 6 courts indoor, again, leased space, but that was recalibrated. And then a good friend of mine, Carlos DeLora, built a indoor facility called the Lab, where it's really for doing content, and it's where the pros will play inside.
Okay.
But
is that where I see Monroe filming all of his Instagram stuff at the Lab? It always says the Lab.
Yeah, most of the pros, you'll either see their content with a Stop Alzheimer's Now flag in the background or the Lab. And that's because they all rotate between either my court or the Lab when they play. It just depends on weather. So when the weather's nice, they're at my court. When it's crap, which it can be in Austin a lot, they'll be over at Carlos's facility. So there's probably 20 to 25 touring pros that call Austin home now. And it was interesting because when Zane and I first started connecting and he found out I had a court, he's like, oh, any chance I can come over and drill and play? And can I bring a few folks? And I was like, sure. And it basically turned into our backyard became the pro playground. So all the pros were looking for a
next
place
thing you know, I got
a PPA event going on in my backyard.
You got
3 or 4 days a week.
Right.
But which was wonderful.
Exactly. You got a turnstile out there.
Well, what was wonderful is, as a pickleball fanatic and enthusiast, I mean, I had the highest level of play you can imagine going on in my backyard every day. And
10 feet from you.
The other aspect of it was I got to know these people, and many of them then became advocates for Stop Alzheimer's Now. Because they're, didn't matter if it was somebody like Johnson Cola or Olivia McMillan or, Carlos is another great example of people. They had family members who had directly been impacted by it, and they wanted to do something. And so I really got to know a lot of these pros on a personal basis, and they've all in their own way been great ambassadors for the foundation.
It's amazing. And you mentioned, once you got to start to know these folks, and me, I like to always say, with my little show, and again, Pickle with Mickle interview series, Shaun McDuffie, Stop Alzheimer's Now, joining me on my virtual court. And I really appreciate the time, but this pickle community is incredible. And maybe you can say that about this sport or that sport, but I'm not in one of those. I found this pickleball thing. And as I continue to get into the pool, I'm constantly amazed how, these pros and their careers are going to continue to shoot up this arc as pickleball continues to grow in popularity and grow from a media perspective. And some of the things we'll talk about here in a minute remain accessible. And we'll talk to you a little bit. And like you said, as you get to know them, it only continues to, hey, here's Shaun. Oh, hi. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I do this. Oh my gosh, do you think maybe we could do this together? I don't know. We might be able to, because it could both make sense. And it's just great. And so now I'm going to speed it up a little. Here comes a little speed 'em up. We're going to get into your personal pickle story, because it's pretty cool too. You mentioned you're not in a boot anymore. You like to play pickleball. And so, pickleball has become kind of front and center with everything you do. I got my MLP shirt on. We were both at MLP Atlanta. How we didn't see each other, I don't know. And I'm going to tee you up for your big news. We talked about it a little bit before we came on the camera, but MLP is now even a little more central to the life of Shaun McDuffie. Talk about what you're doing in MLP right now.
Sure. Well, when I got involved back in 2023, beginning of the year, I really started looking at MLP, learning about it. And I had really, out of curiosity, I was like, boy, I'd love to get involved in this. And Zane, who was a huge proponent of MLP, the team format, he's like, hey, man, he goes, this is going to explode. He goes, MLP is a format that transfers to television, it transfers to fans. And he goes, this is really where you want to be focusing on as you're networking and with the foundation. And so I've been looking at it. I've been talking to Steve Coons about, potentially looking at a team, but team prices were just escalating. It was a land rush, if you will. And when Zane, in this last draft, when Zane got drafted by the New Jersey Fives, I was talking with him and he said, he goes, Gary V is looking to do a round of funding to provide some funds for the team for the next 3 years so that we can really build the brand, et cetera. Because you might want to reach out to him and find out if he's taking new investors, because I'm pretty sure he is. Long story short, he was. I connected with him. I connected with his general manager and basically became a minority owner of the Fives here earlier this year. So we're really excited about that team. It's hard not to get excited. You've got by and without even a close second, the best female playing in pickleball today. You've got Anna Lee. You've got Zane, who's an amazing MLP player, as well as two up-and-comers in Mari Humberg and Will Howells.
And Will.
It's an amazing team. It's going to be a fun team to watch. And I basically bought myself the ability to stand on the sidelines and high-five them and cheer them on.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you, I agree with what you said about MLP, right? From my perspective, I think if you want to attract, media TV fans, team events, rivalries, keep the teams together. And so we'll talk a little bit about this, as a new owner and some of your exposure, let's just say from a spectator there in Atlanta, from a spectator view, let's keep our spectator lens on.
Yep.
Give me your review, 10-second review, MLP Atlanta from the spectator lens.
From the spectator lens, it was everything you could want in an event. You had, the Dream Breaker, which is that tiebreaker in the fifth set, if you will. That to me is the most unique thing in sports. And you had, to give an example, the Fives, every single match went to a Dream Breaker, and they won every Dream Breaker. You look at other teams that were playing that weekend, the number of Dream Breakers was amazing to me. And I had been to a few other MLP events. Yeah. I went to San Clemente the year before. I was trying to think, I went to 2 before this. And I didn't see anywhere near the number of Dream Breakers. So you've got amazing parity. And it's coming down to this, fever pitch fifth set. It was super exciting to watch as a fan. I was literally, when the Fives weren't playing, I was popping to every court possible to watch every match possible. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, spectator lens, the action, incredible. The weather, well, what are you going to do about it? The venue. And so I talk a lot about this, Shaun, I almost called you Steve. Shaun, on my show, that Lifetime venue I thought was great for pickleball. The 2 courts they had set up for the Challenger Premier matches. And what I walked away from there saying to myself, because I had to leave on Saturday, I didn't even get to see my Arizona drive, is that we're going to need a bigger boat, Shaun. We're going to need more ability for fans, because that night, late night, was it Shock Fives, I think, and or who were the Fives playing that one? Was it the Shock? Or
yeah.
At any rate, it was a late night match, and that place was packed, and we could have gotten more people in there, especially the way they kind of have the courts in the stadium
view court
arenas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I think as the game
format, I love that venue, if you will, where you have, the stadium seating. It's not just temporary metal bleachers brought in. It's a sunk down court, kind of what tennis has had. And that's really what they did. Lifetime just converted a championship court into essentially, they normally have 3 courts there, but they reconfigured and made 2 essentially grandstand or center court facilities.
Yeah. And I think as the sport MLP continues, that we're going to need to see true pickle venues, right? We're seeing pickle places pop up all over, and I'm going to get to that here in just a second. But MLP, it's great. Now, MLP's heading to DC. The Fives aren't heading to DC. Is there any particular reason in scheduling, or is that MLP? How does that work?
Sure. There's something that was unique this year. When they went with this year, they said, all right, we're going to have formal draft. Players are going to actually stay with a team, for the next 2-3 years, as opposed to switching every 6 months. And they wanted to move a little bit more to a regional format. So not every team is going to have 23 matches over the course of the year. But you're going to play in about 5 locations, and I believe there might be 9 or 10 events during the year. So every team will play at around 5 to 6 of those venues. So pretty much every venue will be missing 2 or 3 teams. And they did that on purpose, again, to make it a little more regional, a little less, expensive for these players to have to go across the country. We will not be.
That's why my Arizona drive probably won't be in DC. It can't just be because they don't have Andre now since he's been suspended. How about that segue? Let's hit on that right now. Thoughts from an MLP owner on paddle surface testing, suspensions, fines, $50,000. What say you, Shaun McDuffie?
They made an example out of them, and I find it a bit ironic that, I find it a bit ironic that you have major sponsors like Yola producing paddles that are now being banned. And, you look at a guy like Andre, who, and everyone's got a side on this, but there's no real incentive for him to use a practice paddle in a match. I really do believe he submitted it by error. And it wasn't he that submitted it. It was one of his people.
Somebody from the team
Correct. But at the end of the day, he is responsible for what was submitted. But I do think the punishment, if you will, was really severe and extreme. Especially given the ambiguity of how they've been dealing with paddles and paddle testing.
Thank you.
So, no, I do think he was made an example of it. I don't think it was fair.
Yeah, I'll say exactly. And with what we hear, since I've gotten even close to pickleball, paddle this, paddle that, this paddle, that paddle, testing of paddles in tournaments, paddles that rec players use, etc. We'll just say paddles. And for Andre, he's like, yep, I guess there was something on it. That's on me. And you don't hear much from him, right? The guy's like, I take it. From a sports observer and a guy who's watched a lifetime of sports and how fines are levied and how suspensions and probations are handed out, we go right to death penalty with this thing is how I look at it. And for me, again, in the lens of a sports observer, a lifelong sports observer, if the UPA comes out with this kind of stance and we want to go death penalty right out the gate, you can't back off it. And so what's next? And that's just my opinion, is if somebody starts hitting balls out of the stadium, is that going to be $5,000? I mean, what are we going to do? And so there has to be, I've read some follow-up, Shaun.
Yeah. They've set a precedent that is going to be very difficult for them and for everybody moving forward, because you're right. Instead of, you look at somebody like SMU back in the day when they got the death penalty back in the 80s, there was a long history of violations, and they had been assessed penalties. They had been, assessed fines, etc., until finally they said, enough is enough. You guys, it is so egregious. Right. We're giving you a death penalty. Well, to go from 0 to, 60 days and $50,000 is crazy, because now what happens when the next person makes a mistake? You've now set the precedent, and I think it's bad for the sport. I think it's bad for the fans. I just don't agree with it. And there's, it's a super controversial topic, and you look at all the comments and the trolls, and saying, oh, he was cheating, you should have known. It's like, hey man, you're not doing drug testing, but you're going to nail him with this.
You're not doing paddle testing either.
No, and the paddle testing is
they're not doing consistent,
right? I mean, you bring 6 paddles, or now I think they allow you 4. You bring 4 paddles, there's a good probability one of the 4 is going to fail, if not more. And so I don't know. It's also it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon, Shaun, from what I've read, right? It was one of his testing paddles. It's not uncommon for players who get 20 paddles every 5 minutes from companies who are continually trying to innovate the paddle, that they go out and practice, and somebody has this paddle that might not be due on the market for 2 months, but to play against him with, right? Hey, this thing is super hot. I want you to hit against me with it. So I'm ready for somebody with this. So I'm just ready for what might be out there. Yeah, and I think you're right. I've read administrative team error. Yes. And you're right. I mean,
so get quicker.
Every player has beta test paddles that they're playing with all the time. That's how these companies will figure out what they want to roll out and what the next innovation is. But a lot of players will add a substance to add more spin, as an example, but not for them to play with, but for their drilling partners to play against them, so that they can improve hand speed, so they can get used to seeing this. So it's not uncommon. I see it in my backyard all the time.
To your point, if I know I'm going to go be playing in either an MLP match, or she's on my side of the draw and I'm feeling good this week, and there's Annalee Whiplash Waters, I need somebody coming at me with some speed and some crispness, so I'm ready out there.
Yeah. Well, look at any sport.
All right. Great stuff. Great stuff.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, take a look at any sport.
I was just saying great stuff.
Yeah. Look at basketball, right? I mean, if you're playing against San Antonio and you got to go against a Wemby who's 7'5" and can jump out of a gym, well, you're going to have one of the trainers with a broom shoving it up to replicate what it's like to play against a guy like Wemby, right? Now, you're not going to use that broom
absolutely
in a game in the paint, but you're going to practice with it.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how I look at this with this whole paddle incident. But
yeah, no, I've seen innovative ways for basketball players to train with almost a iteration of a blocking sled on the block to be able to get around and start working on those moves. So, what athletes do to train and practice is okay. It's unfortunate that maybe a practice paddle got submitted. We'll just close it out on agreement that sure, we need to have some precedents. We need to have some guardrails. We need to have some direction in paddle testing. We want player safety. I just feel coming out of the gate with, and I'm calling it the death penalty, is a little egregious. You got to rethink this UPA group on how you're going to manage this moving forward, because they're covering PPA and MLP.
Correct. Yeah, no, it will be interesting.
And what paddle do you use?
I'm one of these guys that switches around constantly, and a lot of the pros joke that if they want to test a paddle, they go into my garage because there's about 100.
Give it to you?
Yeah. And I right now I'm actually using I'm using Collins 16 Gen 3.
Okay.
And I've been using that, even though it's a quote unquote illegal paddle. I don't think that will be the case for long. I also have used Zane's Pro XR. I love the spin on that thing. I love the longer handle for two-ease, for being able to, get two hands on easily, especially, I'm 6'5", I've got big hands, so it helps. And I've used the Gearbox Pro a little bit, but really I've been mostly Yola. If I had to pick, like, what have I stuck with for the last year and a half, it's been mostly the Gen 2, Gen 3 Yolas. And anywhere from a 14 to a 16.
Fair enough. Hey, I just got my Mavericks Havik Pro 15, and I'm breaking that in, and I like it. I've been playing with the Mavericks paddle, and I played with the Proton paddle, not the Series A. I've got the Series 2 and 3. I like them. A lot of great paddles out there. I think it comes down to what are you comfortable with? And I mean, hey, if you got some friends that are pros, maybe they throw you something to try out. You never know. So how I want to finish off, Shaun, is I've got some fun stuff ready for us. So now we're, hands battle at the kitchen. We're trying to get past each other. And so I'm going to get to that Vikings mug. Don't you worry. First of all, though, staying on the pickleball court, your dream pickle group that you could play with. Now, this could be pickle players, entertainers, actors, musicians. It's you, 3 people on the court. Who you playing with?
I would go for pro players, and I would go for entertainment and fun. So I would have Zane. He's a close friend, and he's entertaining as all get out in rec games. I would probably have Althoff Merchant. If you ever watch that guy play, no one has more fun in playing than he does. And then I would throw in Julian Arnold. Just because I like watching Zane and Althoff get under people's skin, and Julian gets pretty revved up, and his game doesn't get to that next level until he's pissed. And against those two, right, he'll get to the next level real quick. So I would say
they'll chirp at him.
Yep. I would say I would want to play with those 3. That would be, but again, it's more about have some entertainment area.
Better have some extra padding under your shorts, because they're going to be bagging you up. They're going to be tattooing you out there in that rec game. That's part of the fun, right?
That's a given. The body bag counts in the backyard are I think the only thing they actually keep track of.
Who's your favorite player right now?
Yeah, I mean, I got to go with my homeboy. I got to go Zane.
Good.
And I think when it comes, PPA, he doesn't put a lot of attention or focus on PPA. You get him to MLP, that guy is an amazing teammate, and he makes everybody else around him better.
Awesome.
So I would say Zane.
Very cool. Very cool. Now here's a tough question. What right now is your pooper? What's the duper?
My duper right now is a 3.8. And I would say on a good day,
All right.
I'm a 3-5. I've often said that my knowledge of the game far exceeds my ability to play it. So I'm a student of the game, but it is definitely not translated to the court for me.
Awesome. Hey, I'm 3-5, 7-5, so we're right there together, trying to get to that 4.0.
Yep.
What is your favorite music band? Favorite rock band? Yes, favorite rock band.
I am an old school 70s, 80s metal guy.
Ooh.
I would probably say I'll go with the band I've seen
Rat?
most in concert is Metallica.
Okay, right on.
I've
Awesome. When's the last time you saw Metallica?
Last year. I think last year up in Dallas. So it was on their latest tour.
Very good. Yeah. Well, then you hit that one. I went favorite band. I was going to say best concert, but you're going to go Metallica. I mean, since you've seen them so much.
I would say yes. Metallica, although I got to tell you, the U2 concert in the Sphere, I was fortunate enough to be there for their opening night. That was a mind-blowing experience. If you get
that place is incredible.
To see a concert at the Sphere in Vegas, do it. Don't pass up the opportunity. Do it. Get something on this 200 level. That's my tip for you, because it's a 360-degree experience.
Folks, as well as going to the website, Stop Alzheimer's Now, making maybe a little donation. If you're heading out to Vegas and going to the Sphere, level 200 is where you want to be. You know who's out there opening this week? Dead & Company. And I think it's interesting that the NBA Finals with Boston and Dallas is starting on Thursday. Dead & Company starts their residency or tenure at the Sphere on Thursday. Will they blow that thing up with a big Bill Walton, steal your face or something like that?
That's a great one. They do some amazing things on the outside skin of that. I can definitely see let's just say I'm seeing dancing bears and probably some skulls. So, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Now, you're down there in Texas, and everything's bigger in Texas, but what would be a bigger fear for you, Shaun, snakes or spiders?
Neither. I'm actually the bug pest guy in our house. My wife, I have 3 daughters.
All right.
In college, and I've always been assigned the spider snake guy. What I don't do is, we got 2 dogs. If it's coming out of either end of the dog, I ain't doing it. So my kids and wife take care of any bodily stuff happening. I take care of the critters. So neither one bugs me. We got a lot of both down here.
Yeah, we got them around here as well. Would you stay at a haunted house or resort?
I don't know that I would seek it out. I don't think I would be afraid to do it if somebody says, example, the Driscoll downtown, they've talked about that thing being haunted forever. I've been there, never run into anything, but it's not like I would seek it out to stay there.
Okay. So we're not heading to the Shining Hotel for a weekend with some buddies and we're going to go see what happens there. We're not.
No, I'm probably not going there.
Pretty spirits and ghosts.
Nope.
Powerboat or sailboat?
Do I have to operate it? If I'm operating it, I go powerboat. We do, because I'm not a sailor. I've done captain catamarans down in the BVI numerous times, and that's one of my favorite vacations. But
who'd you do it through?
I actually did it.
Remember?
I don't remember. I had a captain.
Use the moorings or?
No, it's not a moorings. It was a smaller one.
Okay.
And I just got to know the captain and his first mate and loved him, and so we used him every year.
Awesome. Yeah, Navy brat, dad, big sailor, and so we've done twice down there in the BVI. Once on the French side, once on the other side. Moorings both times, except we're the crew. We do the whole
so
deal.
you did a
So it's a lot of fun. That's always been our
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we just get the boat. Yeah. And then we head out. And so it's always been a lot of fun. That's always been like our family thing has been big sailing trips and everything. And my mom and dad, actually, my father had a sailboat for a little bit on their own. They took intercoastal waterway all the way and then Bahamas and back, which if you want to hear a good story and hear perspective, let my dad tell it and then let my mom tell it when they were sailing back home to North Carolina.
Well, and the question is, were they still married after the trip?
Still together to this day. You can't get them apart.
Trip, because man, that would be a recipe for a divorce. If I had to try and sail, there's no chance that my wife and I are together if that happens. So purely from an economics perspective, I got to stick to motorboat. Can't give up half.
No worries there. Now, you're not too far from a place that I found. I think it's a little north of Austin, Round Rock Donuts. Have you had the Texas-sized donut at Round Rock Donuts?
I have, and I'm going to
Is it yummy?
It is very good. I like Round Rock Donuts, but I'm a Shipley donut guy. Shipley is I think a better donut, and it's part of the family. I don't know if you remember UT back in the national championship era, about 20 years ago. There was a guy named Jordan Shipley who was on the team. It's his parents that have it.
Yes. 2 Shipleys went to UT, right? Didn't he have a brother that was pretty good too?
He did. And so the Shipley family, I give them the nod on the best donuts in Austin.
All right. And perfect segue into just a little football talk before I get you off the court. Since you're there in Texas, you're drinking out of that Viking mug. I got you smiling earlier when we talked a little bit about that signing of Jefferson. Yep. How are the Vikings going to do this year? Can you call your shot?
I'm going to say that I'm extraordinarily excited that we signed him. I think, bar none, he is the best receiver in football right now. And I think we had a sort of a unique opportunity to be able to sign him to a world-class, unprecedented deal, because we're banking on a rookie quarterback and a rookie contract the next 4 years. I don't think it's coincidence he got a 4-year deal, because I think we've got a 4-year.
You like how those numbers line up?
Yep, because there's no chance if we had to sign a established veteran, there's no way you can pay both of those and keep any kind of team around you. And that's what happened. If you look at the Packers when they signed Aaron Rodgers, they couldn't afford to sign anybody else. I did see a statistic from one of my Packer fans. One of my Packer buddies told me if the entire receiving roster for the Packers is $10 million in salary this year, the entire roster is making literally a third of what Jefferson. But my counter is your entire receiving core is about a third as good combined as what Jefferson will produce. So, the money, you got to follow the money.
That's right. No, I mean, I thought they were smart to sign him. The money we're seeing is just, come on, it's crazy. And what we're going to see next is the next guy to get a big ticket. And will they write it bigger than that contract? I'm not sure, because everybody will talk about Chase, but did he not get paid? Didn't Chase get paid, or is he waiting to get paid?
Chase got paid, I want to say last year they extended him.
I thought he got a deal last year, right?
Yeah, that was my recollection, but I don't remember. I mean, basically what this contract will do is it'll set the market. I don't see people. I mean, he clearly has been the best receiver the last 3 years. So I don't see people like hopping him, but he's definitely resetting. I mean, everybody that's going to sign a contract the next 2 years needs to send him a thank you card, because they're all going to get paid more. But then again, it pales in comparison to what an NBA player gets. You want to talk about outrageous salaries, start talking about the NBA.
NBA and baseball.
Yeah, I mean, the NBA, you got players that are sitting as 7th and 8th men that, quite frankly, are getting quarterback money, starting quarterback money in the NFL. Pretty crazy.
I hear you. I hear you.
But to answer
I think the NBA contracts need to be looked at.
Yeah, to answer your initial question, as a Vikings fan, you never say this is our year because you are only setting yourself up for heartbreak. I'm going to say our ability to make, I mean, the North is a tough division this year. I think even Chicago could end up being decent. But I actually feel that we've got a shot of making the playoffs if JJ can develop at his pace. If they don't rush him in, before he's ready, I think they could be a late season team where you could see them put a run and make the playoffs. But I think they're likely a one and done if they make it. There's just too many question marks on defense, quite frankly.
Well, I can tell you, there's much more optimism in Minnesota. Well, there's a lot of optimism, I should say, and a lot of hope in our nation's capital, where my favorite football team resonates. Well, they don't. They practice in Virginia. They play in Maryland. We're from D.C., the Washington Redskins football Commanders. We got a new QB in town. We're going to see how that all plans out. Shaun, I really appreciate you coming on the court with me here today. We talked about your foundation, Stop Alzheimer's Now. Folks, go to the website. Look at what they're doing. You can make a small donation. Any bit helps because Shaun will make sure it's getting to the right people. They're doing great things to help do something about this disease that affects so many people. And I think it's absolutely awesome. And especially how you found a way to come together with Pickleball, and it's even expanding the reach for your foundation, the awareness that you're making. So thank you so much for joining me today on the court. I do hope sometime we get some time on the court together. If you get out here for nationals this year, if I find my way into Austin, we'll stay in touch for sure. And as I let you go ahead, plug the foundation, plug the Fives. You want to call your shot on the Fives? They're going to stay undefeated?
The Fives, will they stay undefeated? That one's going to be tough. Will you see them in the playoffs making a run for the championship? 100%. They will be.
Can you get Anna Lee on my show?
That one might be a little tougher. Getting her on any show. She was on Zane's podcast, and I think that was part of her paddle contract when she got absorbed by Pro XR. That got her on that one because they don't do podcasts.
No. That just a flying shot by me.
Yeah, well, hey man, when I see her next, I'll throw it out there. But never say never. But it would be it would be a long shot. So yeah, thank you again for having me. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you at an MLP event or at a PPA event. And
absolutely.
Thank you again for your time. The website is stopalzheimersnow.org. Or you can find us at Stop ALZ Now on Instagram. Love to have, if you've been affected by the disease, you know what? Share your story. Feel free to message us through the site. And thanks again for having me. And I look forward to listening to future podcasts.
Awesome. No, it's my pleasure. Normal show Mondays and Fridays. Shaun, thanks again so much. Good luck this year with the Fives. Good luck with everything you're doing with the foundation. Stop Alzheimer's Now. I look forward to seeing you. Have a great day and a wonderful week.
Thank you, sir.
Once again, incredible. Thank you, Shaun, for everything you are doing. We can all do a little to help stop Alzheimer's now. Now I really want a donut. If you want to learn more about the foundation, go to stopalzheimersnow.org. If you want to learn more about the Fives, check out nj5.com. Stay safe out there and stay hydrated. I'll see all y'all next time for more